even if you pick the right line for a certain speed that you might think it is, you have to choose the proper speed for that line you're choosing. So it's matching speed and line as well as picking the proper line.
Hey, I'm here with my best friend, Hannah. We've known each other like 5 minutes, that's probably right. So we're gonna talk about some putting, and specifically green reading, I think, and maybe even a touch about start direction. And then the third skill that you really need to be good at is speed control. We're not gonna mess around with that today, unless you wanna talk about it. So green reading, I've got a putt here. It's a 3% slope, right to left, and a few different visuals on the ground. You know the aiming point, that's the straight line. And then because of what we were just talking about, we've got a corridor of the different lines you could take to actually make this putt. So what's your first impression when you see this graphic?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm putting, obviously I keep in mind that there are different speeds for each line that you could possibly take.
Yep. So then that's what we're representing here. This is
so the slowest one is obviously the top, and then the firmest speed is the bottom.
You got it. So you got a pretty good window in there.
It's a really nice visual because sometimes when you have long putts, it feels like you have to hit it on this perfect little tiny dot for it to go in. But actually you have quite a bit of space depending on your preference.
I think we should put this on every putting green in North America.
Do you think we could get a projector that just you wear?
Hannah, that's a ridiculous idea. No one will do that. It'll be too expensive. But we've got a couple different lines over here as well. So to hit the lowest line that you could pick, the one closest to me, this is the speed you'd have to hit that putt. It actually almost goes off the edge of the board. And the highest one is this aim point up here. So you've got a speed and your line are important, and then green reading really is, which is what I want to show here. So I had you hit a couple putts. I didn't really tell you why. That's the fun part of it for me. And see how you react differently. So first we're looking at this 3% right to left putt. The way most people read these, and I know you spend a little bit of time with amateur players too, they always underread these putts that break a lot, especially a 3%er. At 12 feet, your margin of error is pretty slim, but it's bigger than most people think. However, most people don't read enough break and then actually hit like little tiny pushes. So one of the putts I had you hit is, the first one you hit is this left to right putt. Right here, we'll talk about that one in a second. But then these next two you hit with this 3% right to left putt. And this is the face angle at impact relative to where you started. So slightly more open. It's basically zero though. So what I would take away from that is you aim these right to left putts really nicely and then just hit your normal putt, and you probably make more of these than you do left to righters.
Which I think is normal for a right-handed player, right?
No doubt about it. When you stand on the side of the ball and you're looking forward, but you need to turn your head to see where the hole's at, that's it's so much easier than this other one that we're going to look at. So typically I see people, depending on how good you are at putting, the face angle at impact on right to left putts gets closer to zero the better you are, like you, rock star player. But I tested someone yesterday who had a 3-degree more open club face at impact than they did when they had address to accommodate that. So that type of person might be you at home watching if you feel this way, might aim really straight and then they try to push it onto the appropriate line.
So you feel like when they are behind the ball, they might pick a certain line, but they get over it and then they kind of see, ooh, maybe this moves more.
I think that's a possibility. I think that's more likely for a good player. I think the bad ones choose however they want to read the putt, whether it's aim point or just using your eyes behind the putt, and don't see the line that high. Like other golfers I've put on this, when you take away the corridor of what you could make for a line, and you just pop up that one, they say, wow, that high? Yes, that high. We're going to do it for the left or right putt. You might feel that way based on that first putting, that first putt. So typically the way I would state this, and maybe you can say something different though, is any right to left putt that breaks a lot, I would aim 6 inches or 1 foot higher than you think it needs to be.
Yeah, and I think another reason the amateurs might struggle with this is they don't tend to spend a ton of time on the putting green before they go out. So even if you pick the right line for a certain speed that you might think it is, you have to choose the proper speed for that line you're choosing. So it's matching speed and line as well as picking the proper line. Yeah,
and well, on that note, for speed, because you brought it up, and I wasn't going to, but you did, which is a good segue here. How far past the hole do you try to roll a ball?
my whole concern with a putt of this length, because the percentage of making something like this is very low, I just want an easy tap in. I don't need it to be past the hole. I really don't care. I just want it within about 1.5 feet around it.
That's pretty good for an expectation. Like really, most people believe they can make a lot of these, but your tour players are making less than half of these, especially on a 3% break. So anywhere, a good player, a foot, little past that would be fine to try to have that there, but the worse you are, like if you're a beginner or not very good, just anywhere over here so that you don't 3-putt is going to lower your score more on average than ever making these things.
Yes, 100%. These are not the ones that you're going to be mad about missing.
Everybody should have one of these full swing greens with putt view, don't you think?
For sure.
Yeah, this virtual green's pretty cool. So here's what we did. We flipped the right to left putt you just hit to left to right, and it's exactly the same slope and amount of break, it's just the other direction. This is where people do things different, you included. Not in a bad way, more of just different. So for this left to right putt, this face angle measurement is actually what you did at address versus impact. Closed at 1.3 degrees, and then these were the right to left putts, so you can see how those are different. So I don't know for sure, but we're gonna roll a couple of these and see, but I think you might not necessarily underread this, but the way you set up to the putt, actually with the face angle, it's more open than it should be for these. So diving into these just a little bit further, you've got the total stroke time and your tempo on this left to right putt was 1.6 to 1. Not that that's wrong or right, but I want to see just for the case in both of these. The other two putts you hit, your right to left putting stroke was a little bit slower on this one, 1.8 to 1, which is probably more what you do on the course or when you practice, tends to be a touch slower. So your tempo changes, the face angle changed a little bit, and that's normal. So you set up somewhere pretty close to here and hit little tiny pulls, and that's how you putt on left to right putts. Same story goes for amateurs though. The worse you are at this, I've seen as much as 6 degrees more closed. Oh, you say, I know, it's shocking, right? So to be able to do that, that's almost 6 cups. That's essentially aiming right at the middle of the hole and hitting a straight pull that will actually break in there.
So from here, 6 degrees all the way down there is going to be about 3 feet?
Almost as much as that breaks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, at least knowing your tendencies, even if you don't plan on changing them, at least if you know what your tendencies are, you can work around it.
And that's a great point. That's where the technology and being able to measure what it is we're talking about is so important. Then you know what you do.
Instead of guessing.
Because you're good. Yeah, well, you're a good putter. And if you make all these left to right putts like you do, that's fine. You don't need to change anything. But most people aren't good at these, especially this one. This one's always under red. You laugh, you know, you see it in pro-ams when you play with amateurs. So if you can't have a putt view putting green, this is the second best way to learn is just to measure your stroke and see what your tendencies are.
So do you feel like when you see amateur players and pros, do you feel like the amateurs do the same thing consistently? Like they do the same things wrong or right consistently, or does it change?
Yeah, the pattern is the same. It's just the error is more egregious the worse you get.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so good question. I like it. So if you had to roll one of these, when you look at this aiming point line, which is this one, does that feel appropriate for that putt you're looking at there?
Yeah, I tend to hit, personally, I hit my putts, I tend to be towards the slower pace, so I'm more of like a play more break and hit them softer player. So that doesn't look weird to me at all, but I think, like you said, at setup, looking at it from the other way might feel a little bit different.
Well, there's a lesson in that too. So set up to this ball, and I'll go ahead and try my best to explain this one while you demonstrate from there. So the easiest way to look down this line that you have is to take your head almost like it's just on a swivel and turn it.
Yeah.
That's how you'd want to look at it. But you know how this goes. The worse you are at golf, you start bent forward instead of just swiveling your eyes down the line you're trying to look at. You tend to get standing up and turning your head.
Yes.
So that essentially
changing the posture.
Yeah, flexing your neck to the left and removing some of the forward bend you have. And suddenly now you aren't even close to looking down the line. So that's even a skill to practice. You feel like you're good at that?
I mean, I feel like I try to keep my natural posture once I've taken like actual setup. I try not to move anything else and just kind of look up.
Yeah.
But even then, still, I putt with a line on my ball just because I know that this is not going to look good from this angle as it does from back here.
Correct.
So the line just helps me kind of trust it.
That's interesting. Okay, good advice too. So if you struggle with these left to right putts, using the line is, I think everybody who gets started should use a line.
It helps a lot.
Yeah, when you get really good at this and you just acquire a certain kind of feel, whatever it is, maybe you aim a little to the right and you always hit a pole, but you're really good at it. My friend Brad Faxon is like that.
He's pretty good at putting.
He's really good. He doesn't want to see a line on the ball, or at least the times we've been out there. I never see him do that.
And even, I think, if you just have the line in practice for 5 to 10 minutes, you don't have to use it on the golf course.
Right. You almost don't even have to hit the putt.
Yeah.
Just put it down, walk up here, and acquire the feel for whether or not that visually feels like you're actually doing the right thing. A lot of this, like green reading, is the same way. An easy way to do green reading is with your handy little gate here. If I put this down, and you like to put this close to 14 inches away.
Yep.
If I put that down right on your putting line and you hit a putt through that, that's how I would practice.
Yeah.
And then recognize if the speed's too fast, then you might not know if you did read that well. But if your speed's really good and you rolled it through this and you're nowhere near the hole, then you misread the putt. So it helps you with that start line direction. So go ahead and set up to this one. You know the read is pretty good. And then just roll this one through. And the only thing you're worried about here is you're trying to check your read. So if you don't make the putt, that's okay. If the speed isn't great, that's okay.
We nicked the gate.
Barely hit the edge of that. It happens to the best players, I'm telling you. But this is a cool way to actually practice
This is a great little test. And this, if you are 14 inches from your ball with the gate, you have to be within 1 degree of accuracy to roll it through. So it's not an easy drill, but it's a really good one.
No, this is hard. You could put down a couple tees, and then you've got this pretty narrow. You could make it a touch wider just to practice the green reading that way. I just like using that as it's a cool prop for practicing start direction and letting you know if you read the putt well. You got any other advice for majorly reading these greens?
I think one thing that really changed the way that I viewed putting, and especially longer putts like this, is that there's this weird analogy that people are saying that people like to say where it's like never up, never in, or you can't leave it short. But the best players in the world leave about 50% of these putts short and 50% of them long. If you have a no pattern where it's just all of them are past the hole all the time, that's a problem.
Well, that's a bad choice of speed for sure. And from this distance, I mean, you're not looking to make a complicated putt like this. If you shoot in the 70s, you know, you're trying to make a few of these every round.
If I drop one of these per round, I'm pretty happy.
And take that, like, here's an LPGA Tour caliber golfer for sure saying, if I make just one 12-foot putt that breaks a lot around, I'm doing well. The expectation for people watching this might not be the same, especially on a hard one. If this is straight, your excuses get smaller.
Changes things a little bit.
But this is not an easy putt. You're not going to make too many of these. So just 2 putting from here is really good. Shooting the 80s, 90s, 100s. So my advice, piling on top of what you said, which was good, is read more break, in particular left to right putts. If you think a putt breaks more than a foot, I'd actually play another 6 inches on top of that and just hit the putt like you would normally, and your outcomes will be better.
Missing on the high side is going to help your score.
I like your advice. You're pretty good at this, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for watching.